What is this conscience? And we're going to start at the beginning by looking at how conscience forms in us. This is from Swedenborg's book, New Jerusalem. Well worth a read. This is from number 130. He says, he has a whole section on conscience here. A conscience forms in us on the basis of whatever religious tradition we follow, depending on how deeply we internalize that tradition. You notice he says whatever religious tradition we follow. That, I mean, today that's pretty hip, but back in his time that was pretty shocking, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people saying you can, whatever path you have is good for you. So we have our basic formation conditions, whatever religious tradition we follow. However, it's not just following a religious tradition intellectually. It's not just, okay, I learned this thing, I did these rituals, I've got conscience, whatever that is, from this. No, he says that an essential element of conscience is willing, like desiring and doing those truths. In other words, living by that. So it's not just the stuff that you load into your brain, it's the stuff that actually dictates how you approach life. And he talks about this in New Jerusalem 131.
As we come to know and believe truths and comprehend them in our own way, when we will them and do them, then our conscience comes into being. Taking them to heart is taking them into our will, because our will is what we refer to as our heart. That is why people who have a conscience say from the heart whatever they say, and do from the heart whatever they do. They also have a mind that is not divided, because what they do is consistent with what they understand and believe to be true and good.
So it's what you actually understand and believe to be true and good. You could be part of a faith tradition or a spiritual path or something to which only part of it you really believe or really makes sense to you or you really think is good, and it would be that part that forms this conscience and whatever it is, your principles you hold highest. Now, the more deeply you can actually improve your conscience, the more deeply you study those principles and contemplate them and put them into action. The more you really work at those, you can evolve your conscience within your tradition. You can get better and better, provided you put some effort and time into it. So we're building this conscience, and as we're going to see, it's worth building, but we want to just round out our description of it. We'll do a little compare and contrasting. All right, so we know already that conscience forms in you based on your highest principles and the principles that you live. This gives you this framework, but let's take a look at what it is and what it isn't. So here's a little chart. So conscience is a life devoted to love for God and or love for our neighbor. Now that's a Swedenborgism, because you might think, oh, so how much do you love God and how much do you, and love other people? But actually, he says it in brief. Love for God is love for goodness, because God is the desire to help everyone, take care of everyone, serve everyone. So if you love the same things that God loves, that's a love for God, not just adoration of the person of God. Love for the neighbor, Swedenborg actually says, means love for the truths or the means that allow things to get done. Either way, it boils down to the same thing, which is love for doing good, right? That's the basis. Just no matter what your particular faith tenets are, that's got to be the engine running the thing to really form conscience. What a conscience is not, keep watching. It's being focused only on knowing what is true and not by living it, only on knowing what is true. So yeah, right. If you're just accumulating knowledge to pass a test or to look good when someone's like, how much stuff do you know? That's not going to do it. Obviously, that's not alive. That's not anything that really is a genuine compass point for you. It's not also, he says, look at this middle one, doing good just as a good-natured person, but not with higher reasons. He really says it. Some people just naturally are nice. It just comes easily to them. There's a pull to them for that. That's fine and it's great, but that's not the same thing as conscience. Actual conscience is humility and obedience to higher principles, even when those are going against your nature. So there's something of an active choice where you're going against negative tendencies. So it's not, there has to be some freely chosen direction there to really make it conscience. Also, doing things only for worldly or selfish reasons. That might seem obvious, but then again, you can not want to harm people or not want to anger people, for purely selfish reasons, because you want to look good, or you don't want their retribution, or you just don't want to be bothered, whatever it is. The only real things that can fall under the category of conscience is if you're doing them because of love for what's good, right? So that's a conscience. So we've got our basic definition of a conscience.